What's up, everyone? Um, Today we're going to be looking through John chapter 18. Um, I know I am in a different location than normal. I'm actually in our missions room here at the church, and I just thought a little different scenery would be nice today. So typically I'm sitting in Lane's office, but today I'm going to sit out here. That also means the lights may get turned off on me. So, because usually the corridor here in the church, we keep the lights off because there's not a whole lot of people here. But I had to turn them on so I could have the lights. So if they get turned off, I'm sorry. There should be enough outside light coming in to still be able to see. But it doesn't matter. If the lights get turned off, they get turned off. If not, who cares? We're just going to keep going. So we are going to be looking, like I said, in John chapter 18. Now, here in John chapter 18, there are there's a lot of really important things happening here in this chapter. But there are two things that we have already talked about through John that Jesus talks about that come to fruition and happen, okay? So if you remember back in, what is it? Let's find this passage I'm thinking about. I think it's in John 13, where Jesus, so John 13, where Jesus predicts the betrayal of Judas, and then Jesus also predicts that Peter is going to deny him 3 times, right? So both of those predictions come back in chapter 13. Now we're fast forwarding to chapter 18, and we're going to see both of those things come to fruition here in this passage. So Jesus's prediction is now coming to pass. Really, his entire prediction up to this point about, even there in chapter 13, where he talks about, hey, like, my time is coming where I'm going to be taken, and I'm going to be taken away, and this kind of stuff, I'm going to be gone, and those kind of things. That's also going to happen here in this passage. That's why this passage right here, John 18, is so important, because all the things that Jesus has been talking about up to this point are happening. So a little context and a little bit of scenery of where we are. Jesus has just been praying in the garden, chapter 17. He's been praying to God about himself and all this kind of stuff, praying about the disciples and praying about the future of Christianity and really the future of us, and praying for us that we will continue to stay strong and committed and as a team and all this kinds of stuff. Really great stuff in chapter 17 of Jesus' heart. But chapter 18 gets really important. So let's go ahead and start reading. Let's go. Let's read verses. Let's see where we're going to start today. 1 through 11. That's where we're going to start first. 1 through 11, and then we'll keep going from there. So John chapter 18 verses 1 through 11 to start. Let's go. After Jesus had said these things, he went out with his disciples across the Cronon Valley, where there was a garden, and his disciples went into it. Judas, who betrayed him, also knew this place, because Jesus often met there with his disciples. So Judas took a company of soldiers and some officials from the chief priest and the Pharisees, chief priests and the Pharisees, and came there with lanterns, torches, and weapons. Then Jesus, knowing everything that was about to happen to him, went out and said to them, "Who is it that you are seeking?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they answered. "Here, I am he," Jesus told them. Judas, who betrayed him, was also standing with them. When Jesus told them, "I am he," they stepped back and fell to the ground. Then he asked again, "Who is it that you are seeking?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they said. "I told you, I am he," Jesus replied. "So if you are looking for me, let these men go." This was to fulfill the words that he had said, I have not lost one of those you have given me." Then Simon Peter, who had a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant and cut off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. At that time, at that, Jesus said to Peter, "Put your sword away. I am not to drink the cup the Father. Am I not to drink the cup the Father has given me?" So this is all just kind of leading up. Like, this is like what is going on right as Jesus is like being arrested. Okay, so Jesus is in the garden. He is praying. He is really praying so intensely that he starts sweating blood because he is nervous and scared, but knows what he is doing has to happen. And so Judas is now bringing the guards and the high officials and these kind of people to come to arrest Jesus. It says that they had lanterns so they could see, the torches and so they could see, and then like weapons, right? So they are coming prepared for a battle if they have to. They're going to take Jesus one way or the other. But Jesus, knowing that they are coming, comes to them and essentially asks, like, who are you seeking? Like, who are you looking for? And of course, he knows they're looking for him. Now, in this version of Jesus's arrest, we don't see Judas coming and like kissing the cheek of Jesus, like to point out that this is Jesus. Now, I could be wrong, but I imagine that prior to Jesus asking who they're looking for, Judas has either already done this or Judas is about to do this. We don't actually know, so it doesn't say it here in this version, but or this version of the story. But that's okay. Regardless, we know that Judas betrays Jesus and brings the guards to him. So again, he asks, like, who are you looking for? He asks him a few times, and until he finally says, like he says, like, I am him, like, I am this dude you were looking for. And he says, so if you're looking for me, then let these people go, meaning like let the disciples go. Like, they're not who you're looking for. I'm who you're looking for. So don't worry about them. Let them go. And so Peter, being the bro he is to Jesus, pulls out his sword and cuts the ear off of one of the servants of the high priest. Now, we don't see it happen here in this exact story either, but we know that Jesus performs one last miracle before the cross. The cross is the ultimate miracle, right? Because he defeats death. But one more miracle before the cross, he takes the ear of the servant and just puts it back on his head as if it never happened. And I think that's incredible. So Jesus performs this one last miracle before the cross. But Jesus, like, after Peter had done this is kind of an important thing that Jesus says to Peter. He tells Peter to put away his sword, like, hey, we're not fighting. I'm going with them. Put away your sword. But then he asks this question: am I not to drink the cup the Father has given me? Meaning, am I not to fulfill the prophecy? Am I not to fulfill what God has told me to do? This cup meaning like the cross, like this cup meaning the things that he has to go do. Am I not supposed to do these things? Kind of a rhetorical question. He doesn't really expect an answer from Peter because Peter doesn't respond. But he's like, hey, I'm supposed to do this thing, so stop. Like, don't fight. It's not worth it because you might get hurt. I don't want them getting hurt. I don't want y'all getting hurt. So let's not fight. I'm just going to go. And so we see that Jesus kind of gives into the arrest on purpose, obviously, for a better reason than we can understand, right? Better reason is that he comes to save us, right? So let's continue to read. We're in verse 12. I think we're just going to read 12 to 14 real quick, then we'll keep going. Verse 12. Then the company of soldiers, the commander, and the Jewish officials arrested Jesus and tied him up. First, they led him to Ananias, since he was the father-in-law sorry, these names are intense, so just bear with me. I'm going to make them up probably, but it's okay. So first they led him to Ananias, since he was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year. Caiaphas was the one who had advised the Jews that it would be better for one man to die for the people. So this dude kind of already has this in his mind. This high priest already kind of has it in his mind, like, hey, it's better for one man to die than to kill all the Jews, or it's better for one man to die than to kill everyone. And so they lead him to him, or to Ananias, who really in return just kind of brushes it off and sends him to someone else, which we'll see here in a second. So let's just keep reading. We'll go 15 through 18 now. Simon Peter was following Jesus and was another disciple. Simon Peter was following Jesus, as was another disciple. That disciple was an acquaintance of the high priest. So he went with Jesus into the high priest courtyard. But Peter remained standing outside by the door. So the other disciple, the one known to the high priest, went out and spoke to the girl who was the doorkeeper and brought Peter in. Then the servant girl who was the doorkeeper said to Peter, "You aren't one of this man's disciples, are you?" "I'm not," he said. Now the servant and the officials had made a charcoal fire because it was cold. They were standing there warming themselves, and Peter was standing with them, warming himself. So we see that Jesus and two of his disciples are going with him to see this high priest. One of them is going, it doesn't say his name, we don't know which one it is, but one of them is going because he knows the high priest and he's hoping that he can kind of bid for Jesus. And kind of like, hey, dude, you don't understand, this is, we shouldn't kill this dude. But we know that Jesus is going to eventually die, right? But he goes to kind of help bid for Jesus, and then Peter doesn't know the high priest, and he's not really necessarily welcome at this place per se, and so he kind of stays outside. It's kind of one of the things that's like, hey, we're gonna go see this friend of mine. You don't know him, but I'm gonna go talk to him real quick. So just wait outside until I come back. It's that kind of a scenario. So Peter kind of stays outside, but while he is waiting to kind of be let in, the doorkeeper servant asks Peter if he's a disciple of Jesus, and we see denial number one. He says, "Nah, that's not me. I am not," he said, right? So that's denial number one, right? We know that Peter's going to deny Jesus 3 times. Okay, so this is just denial number one. All right, so let's continue to read. Verse 19 through 24. The high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and about his teaching. "I have spoken openly to the world," Jesus answered him. "I have always taught in the synagogue and in the temple, where all the Jews congregate. I haven't spoken anything in secret. Why do you question me? Question those who heard what I told them. Look, they know what I said." When he said these things, one of the officials standing by slapped Jesus, saying, "Is this the way you answer the high priest?" "If I have spoken wrongly," Jesus answered, "give evidence about the wrong. But if rightly, why do you hit me?" Then Ananias sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest. So in this interaction between Jesus and Ananias essentially just asks him, "Hey, what are you doing? Explain yourself to me. Explain the teachings that you've done. Explain yourself." And Jesus simply replies with, "Look, I've spoken openly this entire time. I have not hid anything I've said. I've never tried to persuade people. I've never tried to speak in secret. I've never tried to hide anything. I've been open and honest about everything I have done." And so he basically says, why are you questioning me? Because at this point, I've never hidden anything. So you're trying to get me to say something that I've never said, or you're trying to get me to maybe give you a secret, but I have no secrets, right? So one of the officials slaps Jesus, right? Just pops him, right? And Jesus, and his response is like, "Is that how you're going to answer? Like, you're not going to give him an answer? You're just going to tell him that you know." He thinks that Jesus is being very sly and that Jesus is like being dishonorable or um, being rude to this priest or this guy Ananias. But Jesus simply replies, "Just like, have I said anything wrong? Like, no. I've literally just told him, hey, like everything I've said, like I've been honest about. Like I'm not lying. I'm not being secretive. I'm being honest about everything I've said." And so he's like, "So if I've spoken any evil, then hit me. But if I haven't, then why? Like, why did you hit me?" And so after all this, we see Jesus gets sent somewhere else um, to be kind of put on trial again by a different person. Now, so that was person number one. We're about to go to now person number two that Jesus is going to essentially be put on trial by. So verse 25. Now Simon Peter was standing and warming himself. They said to him, "Aren't you the one of his disciples too? Are you?" He denied and said, "I am not." One of the high priest's servant, as relative to the man who Peter cut off his had cut off, said, Didn't I see you with him in the garden?" Peter denied again, and immediately a rooster crowed. So now we have denial 1 and 2 from Peter, or 1, 2, and 3, excuse me, 1, 2, and 3 from Peter. You see that we remember that Jesus told him, "Hey, you're going to deny me 3 times," and now we have seen all 3 times. The second one being he's kind of sitting by the fire, warming himself up, and someone asks him, "Hey, aren't you one of one of those disciples of Jesus?" And he's like, "No." And then someone who is a relative of the dude who Peter previously cut the ear of, cut his ear off. He's a relative of this dude. Asks him, like, if he says, like, "Didn't I see you in the garden with him?" And he's like, "Nah, dude, that wasn't me." And then instantly, right after that, a rooster crows. So it's important because Jesus says, you're going to deny me 3 times before the rooster crows. And what happens? The third time, the rooster crows immediately. Now, in this moment, we don't see it happen here, but Peter instantly regrets what he's done, because he remembers Jesus telling him this is like Jesus had told him this probably 24 hours before, maybe. Told him that, hey, before the rooster crows, really the night before the rooster crows, you're gonna deny me 3 times. Like, but it's like the middle of the night. It's kind of weird. Like, how am I gonna deny you? Like, I'm not going to, Jesus. Like, that's not who I am. But what happens? He denies him 3 times. The rooster crows, and he instantly remembers that was the 3rd time I just did it. I denied Jesus. Like 3 times I denied Jesus, right? So we see this denial happen, and instantly he regrets his decisions. So let's continue to read. We still have a little bit more. We'll go 28 to the end, 28 through 40. We'll just go ahead and go to the end, and then we'll come back. Really, we're going to go to 38, excuse me. Then they led Jesus to Cephesus, where the governor headquarters. It was early morning. They did not enter the headquarters themselves, otherwise they would be defiled and unable to eat the Passover. So Pilate came out to them and said, "What charge do you bring against this man?" They answered him, "This man, if this man weren't a criminal, he wouldn't have handed him over." Pilate told them, "You take him and judge him according to your law." "It's not legal for us to put anyone to death," the Jews declared. They said, "This is so Jesus's words might be fulfilled, indicates what kind of death he was going to die." Then Pilate went back to the headquarters, summoned Jesus, and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Are you asking this on your own, or have others told you about me? I am not a Jew, am I? Pilate replied. Am I not a Jew, am I? Pilate replied. Your own nation and the chief priests handed you over to me. What have you done? My kingdom is not of this world, Jesus said. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight so that I wouldn't be handed over to the Jews. But as it is, my kingdom is not from here. You are a king then, Pilate answered. And Pilate asks, you say that I am a king, Jesus replied. I was born first, and I was born for this. I have come into the world for this, to testify the truth. Everyone who is the truth, everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. What is truth? Said Pilate. So here in this time, we see Jesus go before Pontius Pilate. Okay, Pontius Pilate is really going to be the one in the end who, he is not really the one who sends Jesus to the cross, but he is the one who kind of allows it. But in the end, you can say that he didn't do it. Whatever, we'll get to that later. But we see that they bring him to Pontius Pilate. Pilate essentially says, like, why do you bring this man? Like, why have you arrested him? Why are you bringing him to me? And these people who brought him essentially to say, we wouldn't have brought him if he wasn't a criminal. And so he's kind of asking, like, what has he done? But we see that him and Jesus actually have a conversation later on. So they bring him to Pontius Pilate, but Pilate essentially responds with, you take him and judge him according to your law, because my law as a Jew basically says I'm not allowed to kill anyone during the Passover. And so right now it is this festival of Passover in this time frame, and in the festival of Passover, you're not allowed to kill anyone, even as like the governing body. And so he's like, hey, I'm not going to be killing him. It's not going to be on my hands. I'm not going to do it. So if you want to judge him and you want to kill him, dude, you go for it. And so it says right here, where was it? They said this so that Jesus' words might be fulfilled, indicating what kind of death he was going to die. So the way the Jews would have killed Jesus was going to look different than the way these other people were going to kill Jesus. So we don't exactly know how the Jews would have killed him, but he probably wouldn't have been on a cross. And so because Pontius Pilate says, like, I ain't going to do it, him dying on the cross essentially was going to be his death. And that's why we know that he was going to be put to the cross, because it wasn't going to be from Pilate. So Pontius Pilate and Jesus start having this conversation, and Pilate essentially asks him, like, are you the king of the Jews? And Jesus just simply responds with, are you asking this on your own, or have others told you about me? Like, are you asking this because you truly want to know, because you want to know if I'm your king, essentially? Or are you asking this because you just heard the rumors? I need you to tell me which one. And then Pilate responds with, I'm not a Jew, am I? So he's like, I'm not a Jew, so clearly I've heard about you. Now, if he would have been a Jew, he would have been asking Jesus if he was a king, if he was the king of the Jews, because he believed him, essentially. But since Pontius Pilate's not a Jew, he's asking because other people have told him about Jesus. So we see Jesus' response. Jesus kind of sits here and tells him that, like, hey, if I was the king of this, like, earthly domain like you are, my servants would be fighting back for me. But because I'm the king of the universe, because I'm the king over all things, I have no reason to fight, because I already have dominion over you, essentially. So Jesus is kind of sitting here saying, like, hey, I'm not going to fight because I'm already the king and I know it. So here at the end of this passage, we'll be in verse, really the end of 28 or 38 to the end of 40. let's read that, and then we will be kind of done for the day. So we'll start with 38. What is truth? Pilate said. After he said this, he went out to the Jews against him and told them, I found no grounds for charging against him. You have a custom that I release one prisoner to you at the Passover. So do you want me to release the king of the Jews? And they shouted back, not this man, but Barnabas. Now Barnabas was a revolutionary. So here at the end, Pontius Pilate comes out and says, hey, I have found no reason to kill this man. I have no charge against him. So for me, I'm not doing anything because it's not, I don't think it's right. I have no charges against him, so I'm not going to kill him. But as custom in the Passover, we release a prisoner, as your custom is. So do you want me to release the king of the Jews? Or do you want me to, should I release him? And they instantly respond with, no, don't release him. Release this other dude, Barnabas. Release him. Now, Barnabas clearly was arrested for things that he had done, and he was an actual quote-unquote criminal. But Barnabas was let go, and Jesus wasn't. And this is kind of Pontius Pilate's way of saying, like, hey, I'm going to have no reason to kill this man. I find no reason to kill him, and so I'm not going to be the one doing it. You're going to be. So if he's going to die, it's going to be because of things that you want to do, not because I want to do it. So literally, he's washing his hands clean of Jesus' death and saying, it's not me, it's you. So if you want him set free, set him free. Oh, you don't want him free? You want Barnabas free? All right, Barnabas is gone, and now Jesus is here, but I'm not doing it. So we're going to see in the coming passages. We'll go through John 19 tomorrow, which John 19 is a lot. We might break up and do a couple days, but there's only 3 chapters left here in John, and these 3 chapters get really intense. If you know anything about the Bible, you know anything about the coming of what happens after Jesus' arrest, you know that it's about to get really intense. Great passages, but it's going to get really intense. So that's going to wrap it up for today. We see that today Jesus was arrested. Jesus was taken to a few different people to be put on trial. Every person thus far has been like, hey, I'm not gonna do anything because it's not my place, or I don't feel like I should. But the people have spoken, and the people have said, nah, we want this dude arrested. We want this dude put to death. And so that's what's going to happen. So that wraps it up for today, guys. We'll see you back tomorrow for John chapter 19. Hope you have a wonderful day. Feel free to message us or whatever if you have any questions about really anything we've talked about or the coming things that we're going to be talking about. Other than that, man, hey, we love you all. Have a wonderful day, and see you next time.